Resident Evil 9 is a game I was heavily excited for when the trailer started coming out not too long ago. With completely new graphics and interesting new premise to the story, Resident Evil 9 promoted itself as two different genres in one game, which to me I was completely excited for. I'm a huge survival horror lover, but I also enjoy the action sometimes, and this game coming out, I was hoping for so much, and I think overall it pretty much delivered on every aspect. Starting off with the story, I think it's a pretty interesting story. It does a good job of having you on suspense for the entire game. I'm just wondering why Grace is sort of the, chosen one, and what her purpose is in all of this, in this whole game. I think they did that very well, and for me, it kept me on high alert and just wanting to get to the end of the game to figure out what's really going to go down. And I think it's a pretty simple story. It's nothing too crazy, in my opinion, but I think it's a pretty interesting story. It's cool. It doesn't really push the boundaries of Resident Evil that much, which is something I'm going to get into a bit later, but that's all I have to say pretty much for the story. The gameplay is really where I'm going to get into the deep nitty-gritty for this game. Starting off with Grace's section, because the game is sort of split in half, obviously, but starting off with Grace, I think her section was done pretty well, especially the first half with the care center. It does a really great job of bringing back that classic survival horror that survival horror fans love, and I think it did a really good job. Its level design is pretty amazing, and its artistic design is pretty well done too. The care center is a very beautiful place, and coming in with new features such as the blood collector thing, which I found to be very satisfying and a very interesting way to craft ammo and craft different materials to help you on your journey. It's definitely an interesting new mechanic that which is something I really appreciate, is when they do something different each time. They introduce something that the series has never seen before, or really in any other survival horror game, I don't know. But it definitely is an interesting mechanic, and something that is super duper fun to do. I love it. Speaking of blood collecting though, I just wouldn't get into the enemies real quick that really affect the gameplay in my opinion. There's two different things I kind of want to talk about, but first of all, with the enemies in Grace's section are super duper cool, and some of the best that, in my opinion, in the whole entire franchise. First of all, something that's different with these zombies from the past is that they keep some sort of resemblance to the past lives, which, for example, some janitor who turned into a zombie would probably try to kill you with his cleaning supplies and say certain stuff that's related to his job, which I think that's really just genius and such an awesome way of changing up the zombies and really adding some sort of memorability to them. I don't know if that's a word or not. It makes them more memorable and gives them a specific, unique identity, besides from being just a copy and paste of each other like we've seen in every single game that ever existed. But it's really cool. I love that. Another aspect I really want to talk about with this game is how it feels sort of more difficult than some of the recent games. For example, ammo in this game feels harder to get with Grace. Everything feels much more brutal, and the enemies are much more dangerous. And again, with the ammo situation, it feels really hard to get ammo, and it feels like you have to be more careful than ever before in any other Resident Evil game. This could be just me though, but I feel like the kind of survival horror that people remember back in the day where ammo felt scarce is actually replicated in this game, but it's actually for real this time. Overall, Grace's section, especially on Insanity mode, which for anybody who hasn't played that mode, you will have PTSD after you beat it. That's all I say. The Grace section is absolutely difficult, and it really challenges. It separates the amateurs from the pros when it comes to survival horror. That's all I'll say. Because something that I've noticed in Insanity mode is that a lot of things felt scripted for Grace. It feels like enemies were moving in a way that had a certain path that you needed to keep dying over and over to remember, so you can eventually figure it out. I could be just crazy, but I feel like I could see a clear pattern with every enemy. It wasn't random. Everything felt too intentional and perfectly placed to challenge your sort of problem solving, because you're going to die over and over again whether you liked it or not, because you had no idea how to solve these situations until you finally do. And I just think that provided one of my most favorite challenges and most hated ones too. Overall, for Grace's section, I think her section is really good, but that's not all that there is though, because there is sort of the basement part and a couple other parts, which for the basement I can actually talk about. It's an interesting part of the game, I mean, on the first playthrough, but after that it becomes one of those parts in really any game that it's just I don't want to play again. It's one of those sections of Resident Evil where, you know, once I get past the good stuff, you know, I get to this part and it's just I don't want to do this again. Which again, this is a problem that I'm going to reiterate later in the video. For now, I want to keep it as positive as possible, but I'll talk about the negatives later. Moving past the basement, you will find yourself doing the next part of the game, which is really short. Again, I'll talk about this later, but you're basically having to get helicopter keys, maybe learn some lore, I don't know. It's a kind of a crazy part, but at the same time it's nothing much to offer. Again, there's a little part later after one of Leon's shorter sections. That's just her turning on the power and, no, spoiler alert, but Emily dying, and yeah, again. To wrap up Grace's section, I know I said I was going to talk about this later in the video, but one problem with Resident Evil 9 is that it kind of, after the first playthrough, it sort of just becomes a game where only two parts of the game are really good or really even worth replaying. For example, for Grace, that would be the Care Center section. After that, I'm not going to want to replay anything after that, because what is there? There's nothing there. Maybe the basement, but what about after that? That section is really short and it's just, there's nothing there. There's nothing going on there. It's kind of just, you're just running around after that, and yeah, it sucks that it's like that for me, but personally I feel like Grace's section is only good with the Care Center. Moving on to Leon though. Leon is absolutely amazing in this game, just as a character. First of all, the way they designed him from looks is absolutely amazing. I love it so much. He just looks so cool. I don't know. And older Leon is just super duper cool. Gameplay though, he's super duper fun. Well designed. All the enemies he faces against are just fun to run around and beat, which is to be expected. You know, his is more of a RE4-6 kind of style, which really works well for this game, and its kind of enemies too. It's fun, very smooth. The weapons he uses is also good too. All the animations, the kicks, and also that dang hatchet, which to me is one of the best mechanics ever. But that hatchet is just so useful. I can't even explain just how fun it is to slice someone's head off with a hatchet in RE9. Just such a cool secondary weapon that, man, it's almost like the knife from RE4. You know, it's kind of like that. It's like the sidekick for Leon. That's just really, really powerful. Leon's section starts off with this intersection going down the street, which is a pretty cool part of the game. Very fun little teaser for what's going to be Leon's sort of side of the story. It gives you that little taste. Yeah, quick action-oriented section of the game. Really cool. After reaching the basement as Grace, you get another short Leon section where he's tied up. he beats up Gideon and explores a little bit of the care center before arriving in a room full of computers and where he talks to Sherry and stuff. Again, another short teaser. Like, they're slowly introducing Leon to the story, which I can see why a lot of people didn't like this, because it's like, let us play as Leon. Why is it so short? But yeah, it's another fun section. It's fun. Again, same thing with the part we have to defend Grace at the church. It's super cool. Kind of annoying sometimes, but you know, it's one of those defense sections. It's cool, and then once you finally get past that first part, you get the boss fight inside the church where it's just chaos, explosions, and enemies everywhere. Super fun. And then once you finally get past those sort of teasers for Leon, you finally get to his actual side of the story with Raccoon City and Ark. Which, again, Raccoon City is super fun, well designed, cool atmosphere going on. Pretty short, but you know, it doesn't overstay its welcome, because I feel like on repeat playthroughs it can be a bit tedious to do. Especially when you have to go to two completely different sides to get those parts for the detonator. It can be a bit tedious, but that's just me. But overall, you do have some fun fights along the way, so that's what keeps it entertaining, even though I don't want to do that part all over again and again. So yeah, Raccoon City section, again, it's really, it's not the only section for Leon that's good, because then there's the RPD, which nothing much happens there, other than some lore stuff. But the whole return to RPD, I think, is just well done. I know a lot of people look at it as nostalgia bait, but I think it does its purpose well. It's a nice little return. The atmosphere is just completely different, but heavily nostalgic at the same time, which I guess is the point. And here, there's another problem with this part of the game, which Capcom seems to have not learned their lesson yet, which is stop forcing people to play a part of the game that only matters in the first playthrough. Almost done with Raccoon City section. You get a couple of boss fights. One is Super Tyrant, which is a pretty fun boss fight, but on Insanity, an absolute nightmare. Then you make your way all the way to the plant, which is kind of a cool boss fight. It's very easy to beat because its pattern is so predictable. But I mean, I kind of like that it is, because on harder modes, it can be a pretty dangerous guy. Once you make your way all the way to Ark, some pretty cool stuff happens. You can fight against people with guns, which for a Resident Evil game is kind of annoying, but it provides a challenge for Leon. Instead of just going around blasting enemies, you kind of have to just take it a bit slow, play it smart, and strategize, which is cool. I appreciate that. I believe here is the part we also fight Hunk, which he's a pretty cool boss fight. I love his fight on Insanity mode. It took me a while to beat, but it really challenges you and forces you to get better, which is what I like about it. We'll still play as Grace here for a little bit, which for some reason I kind of love the lab section of RE9. I don't know what it is, I sort of just love it. And normally I wouldn't say that because it's a Resident Evil game. Lab sections tend to be the part where the game is just like the part of the game where it completely fell down and just isn't that interesting anymore. But I can't say the same for RE9. I don't know why I love it here. It's not that there's anything crazy here, but it's alright. Then once you finally make your way to that boss fight, pretty fun boss fight. It looks like a fighting stage in the first half. It's kind of cool. Gideon does this sort of classic villain monologue while mid-boss fight kind of thing. Again, nothing crazy, but it's fun. Then the second half where he turned into a nemesis, which I don't know how to feel about it. I guess it's cool, I guess. Maybe? I don't know. Once you finally beat that boss fight, the ending is just beautiful. And also, I love that little reference towards Chris and Leon maybe meeting up one day. I hope that becomes a thing, because that would just be so cool, having a game with Leon and Chris That would be so cool. Yeah, that's pretty much Resident Evil 9. Overall, Resident Evil 9 is a pretty good game in my opinion. Yeah, when those trailers were coming out, the teasers, I was watching Bach with Soup, just discussing the teasers. It was such a hype moment, almost nostalgic now when you get to just be hyped for a game. Like, there's nothing like being hyped for something and waiting for it to come out with the trailers and teasers and just that slow anticipation of what's it gonna be like. Like, that first playthrough was super duper awesome. And now looking at it from a more less sort of hype bias sort of perspective, it does have some issues that I think sort of messes up the game for me. One last time about this again, the main problem with this game I have at all is the fact that the game only really is worth replaying in two different parts of the game. Like, you can keep the intro of the game if you want, but with Grace, I'm just starting at the save room in a different save file and then playing. And then once I get past the basement level, I'm pretty much just skipping the whole game and then just going to Raccoon City with Leon. Like, those are the only two parts of the game that are worth replaying. Like, what is there to replay once you get past the basement? Again, which is a short section. I mean, that's something I wouldn't normally like to do, just skip parts of the game, but with Resident Evil 9, it feels like it forces me to, because the game just offers so little in the middle of it, which of course in the first playthrough won't matter, but replaying the game over and over, it just doesn't really provide much for me, and just forces me to skip to the part of the game that's actually has some form of substance to, replay. And that's the main issue with Resident Evil. Other than that, I think it's a pretty good game. Again, it only makes me more excited for what Capcom is going to do with like Resident Evil 10. Really, that's kind of what it does for me, but on its own, it really is amazing. Also, shout out to whoever produced the save room theme for this game. I know a lot of people didn't like it because of it's kind of different. I think that's why I like it. It just has a super nostalgic sort of vibe to it that, again, no other Resident Evil theme has had besides like RE4. That's the closest thing I can think of to a save room theme being sort of unique and different from everything else. It doesn't follow the same sort of formula. It does something completely out of the ordinary, and I think that's why I like it. It's a very nostalgic kind of vibe, and it makes the game feel older than it actually is. So yeah, cool. And the main menu theme after you beat the game as well. Amazing. Very, very good. Other than that, that's kind of Resident Evil 9. I don't know so much to say. If I had to give this game a ranking, which is just something I've never done before, I'm just doing this for fun, I give it an 8. I think an 8 does this game well. It could be bumped down to like a 7 because of the fact that like most of the game it just doesn't, like, there's no reason to replay it. But I think an 8 just for the quality and how everything just feels so good to play and how well designed it is, to where it sort of overcomes that. Overall, I think if you buy Resident Evil 9 for the first time, you'll get a good experience out of it. I genuinely think you do. Anyway, that's all I have to say for this game. Capcom has been on the road, and I hope they continue doing this, especially since they're probably going to come out with so many remakes and remasters, or just remakes, but Capcom has just been doing the thing, just pumping out masterpieces left and right, and I always appreciate them for that. Anyway, it's been Nathan Wolf here. Peace out.